Microphone. 3, 2, 1. We are live.
Woo! Fired up, footballers. Welcome back.
Fired up, footballers. We're back here live in Chicago with TrueMartyParty. Going to talk about Orlando. I don't think they can hear me, guys, but they can hear you.
All right. Thanks again for having me on, guys.
Heck yeah. Welcome to the show. Welcome back, Marty. I'm glad you came back.
Yeah, it was fun the first time around.
It was a
All
blast.
right, so here we are again. 2 matches in. I think we will get right into it like we did last time.
Hold on, I wanted to ask Marty a few questions before we get into it. Marty had some updates on Section 8 and on the charities, on the Food for Fire charity, which is just blown up. It's been awesome. And Marty could certainly speak a bit more about that.
Yeah, so yesterday we had our first in-person kind of donation tailgate site, as we'll do for all home games for the rest of the year. We raised a bit of money, and thank you to Buckle Down for sponsoring yesterday's tailgate. We'll be featuring a different local brewery every time. So yeah, it's doing well. We should be across probably 27% when I make the deposit, and yeah,
there we go.
We're gonna keep going. So that's good. The Section 8 tailgate was pretty busy, and yeah, it was for the weather and the early kickoff. It was a good game in terms of Section 8 related activities.
I think that the scholarship was given out. Didn't I read about that you were talking about last time?
Yeah, we haven't given it out yet, but we are in the process of working with Chicago Community Kitchen. They're going to come out for a couple games this year, and we're going to be sponsoring one of their scholarships. And there's a potential that some of their culinary school students will come out and do a tailgate just to get some cooking experience as well. So yeah, I'll update you guys with that when we have details.
That'll be a blast. That sounds awesome. One thing I saw you tweeting about the other day, we'll just get this out of the way real quick. You said something about maybe initiative with paws. I don't know if there's any feet on the ground or any friction with that, but
yeah. So ultimately, what I'd like to do is go back to getting a pups at the pitch day going. So nothing on that yet, but I'd love to see if that's doable for the summer. So I'll be reaching out to the Chicago Fire soccer staff in the coming months to see if we can work that out. In the meantime, we might...
Wait, Marty, what would that be? There's just puppies at the pub to pitch event? Is that what that is?
It's basically, no, you can bring the dog to the stadium we did a few years ago when Imes was one of our sponsors. So cool. We'll see if we can work something like that out again. If not, maybe we'll do a watch party at a dog-friendly bar and we can do something along similar lines. I think we are going to be making a merch Bobo scarf, though, with the proceeds benefiting Paws Chicago or some other type of dog-related charity. So keep your ears peeled for that as well.
That's awesome.
A merch Bobo scarf?
A merch Bobo scarf.
And so a French bulldog on a scarf with Chicago Fire on it?
Absolutely.
My fiance says she wants 6.
Perfect.
Like right now. She's ready.
Do you guys already have concept art going for that? Because you really could go anywhere with that scarf.
Yeah, we do. We've got a few designs in the works. So, yeah, I'll let you guys know when it's finalized.
That's
All
awesome.
right.
Awesome.
And you were showing us. I got a sneak peek at the jersey you sent our way too. So that was cool.
Yeah, just waiting on the Food Depository to redo their logo. They're going to be launching that in May, and after that, we're going to get working on getting this Section 8 jersey released, hopefully, and that'll benefit the food drive as well.
That'd be awesome. All right, Jeffrey, let's break into the game.
The food drive as well.
Ooh, sorry.
Okay. All right, so I'm sorry, did you kind of cut out there? Do you want to talk about the game first?
No, yes. You could break into the game. I don't know if you have the stats pulled up, but we could kind of start with the scoreline 1-1.
Yeah, we'll just ask Marty real quick. Marty, so home opener, like we alluded to earlier, the Fire tied 1-1 against a very beatable opponent. Your thoughts on the match overall?
Yeah, I think 3 points were a must yesterday. I think you need to win your home games if you're going to be successful in this league. Not only that, but, with all due respect to Orlando and the project that they have going there, they are not a good side. They weren't last year. They haven't shown too much this year yet. Again, I don't wish anybody ill will, but they're just, I don't see what's going to be improving down there to make them a playoff team this year. So not getting all 3 points and almost losing against them is not a good thing. However, there are, promising aspects of yesterday's game for the second game in a row. I think possession statistics were in our favor, and possession statistics don't win the game for you, but it's what you do with the ball. But the more you're on it, the more opportunity I think you have. I think that you saw a lot of positives with the front six once again. Nico was a little bit off, but he just had a kid a week ago, and I'm sure he's still adjusting to that. And he'll sharpen up and get back to his form, I hope.
Well, we'll get into that for Nico, because we certainly saw some criticism being launched his way that, I don't know, probably quite a few of us think is certainly unwarranted, to be throwing at, I don't know, a 5-time Golden Boot winner in multiple leagues.
Yeah, for sure, and we can talk about that later and get into that. But other positives, Georgi Mihailovic looks like the real deal again.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to sit down with Georgie's dad a couple weeks ago and, just thank him for everything that he's done for Georgie to be able to go into the player. Everything that he's done for Georgie. He's got a very high ceiling. I think we talked about that at the beginning in our original podcast together.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to see that come to fruition. Przemek Frankowski is going to continue to take the league by storm, I think.
Przemek, is that how it is with the little? I know we have a cousin actually named Przemek, but that's what he wants to be called, Przemek.
Yeah, that's what I'm going with. I think it's easier than Przemysław.
Przemysław.
So he's growing into his role. CJ Sapong looked wonderful for a second game in a row.
We gotta talk about CJ.
Scoring touch.
Yeah, he's looked really good. He looked strong. He was definitely playing out of position out on that wing, but we have to say, compared to what we've seen maybe with we have seen with Lucho Saloniak and MDL in those same positions, what I thought he produced there was so much better than maybe not as good as maybe on par with MDL, but certainly better than the production we saw from Lucho Saloniak. But what Jeffrey commented when I mentioned that was like, well, he's certainly got a lot more talent to deal with, though, to work with too.
Yep. And CJ playing out on the wing isn't entirely unheard of. I think when Vermes utilized a front three a few years ago when he was at Sporting, CJ wasn't always the out-and-out number 9 there either. At Philly, when you saw the 4-2-3-1 that Curtin rolled out last year, there were times where CJ was brought on as a late sub and utilized a little bit wider as well. So he's certainly got the versatility. He has the positional understanding. He's got the skill. And like you guys rightly pointed out, the strength. I think he offers us something in the air that we haven't had for a while. And I'm glad to see him doing well. He's a really, really great guy on and off the field. He's very active in terms of the charity that he runs. So it's a wonderful addition all around for the Fire.
Marty, I share your sentiments in that it's definitely disappointing to walk away with 1 point after these 2 matches. Definitely wish we had 6 points coming out of those 2 matches. But, the silver lining, and Pano alluded to it, and the silver lining is, it is what it is. But I still think we saw a better brand of football at moments. And those moments were almost better than any moments we saw last season. So I know it's not a complete 90 in 2 matches, but I am happy to see some of the better football being played in these first 2 matches. And I think it's due to those guys that you were talking about, Frankowski and those newbies. And my question to you is, whose stock from these newbies, Frankowski, Marcelo, those guys, whose stock has gone up and whose stock has gone down in these first two matches?
I think all of their stock has gone up. Marcelo was, a quiet hero yesterday. I think positionally, he and Kappelhoff are starting to grow in an understanding. Marcelo seems very comfortable on the ball when he needs to be in tight situations. He gives us more in the air than we've had in the past in the back as well. So his stock has gone up. Frankowski came on yesterday after picking up an injury a couple days ago in training, and still gave 100% effort and pulled out that ludicrous assist. So both of them have done very well. Like I praise CJ, he's been doing very well. So yeah, in terms of the newbies, I like what I see so far. Yeah.
What do you think of Diego Campos' performance?
Diego Campos is not a right back. And having said that, I think he did okay. I think he did better than he did in the LA game. But you're asking someone to play out of their natural position at a fairly young age. It's very clear he doesn't have the instinct defensively. There are times where positionally you can tell he's a step off coming back in defense, or he's a step off in moving to cover, because he has that drive to go forward. He's a winger, and it's not his fault he's being asked to play a right back. So I will say that for him. But in the LA game especially, and I had a chance to rewatch that, you could tell that after halftime, Schelotto told his players to run at both wings very, very clearly. And even losing Alessandrini, they were able just to continually tear down the wings. So Campos should not be utilized there.
For me, what I'll say about Campos is you can see that the talent is there and that he belongs in the MLS field, and he's definitely being played out of position at that right back spot. But then you also, when we certainly have to look at the alternatives, when you have Nico Hasler, who's maybe a bit more defensively able than he is. So it's like, so it comes down to maybe sacrificing a little bit of defensive for that offensive flair that he's getting from Campos. That's at least maybe what Pano's thinking there with Campos. And the kid's talented and he needs to play. So, and how is he going to get out in this field with all those guys up front with the talent attacking the attacking talent that the Fire has? It's going to be hard for him to see the field as it is. So this is a way to get a minute. So, but that said, is the team suffering? Is it a weakness that gets picked on? To me, he seems to be the strongest option. What do you think about that? Do you think Nico Hasler is a stronger option, or he is defensively, I would say, but for what maybe you could sacrifice that and go more offensive, but then you can't get the performance that you got out of Corrales with a red card and just being really defensively deficient.
Yeah, I mean, the question should now be, is a back four working for us after 2 games or not? And this is something I talked about the last time you guys had me on. I think that a back 3/back 5, however you want to term that, is better suited for the personnel they have. Hasler is very much better as a right back in a back 4. He played in a back 5 for Toronto, but had a successful time defensively there. I think he offers you more experience, better reading of the game defensively than Campos. This is someone that has, captained the Liechtenstein team in a number of positions, right?
Striker, cam, winger, center mid, right back. He can play it all. But then you look at Campos, who's kind of being asked by Pano to do something similar. Play forward and back.
Yeah, but I think you need to be able to shore up defensively in the next couple of games.
Yeah.
If you can't keep a clean sheet with that back 4 against this Orlando side, you've got Seattle coming up at the weekend that have looked really good in their first 2 games. I was able to catch that match last night. Mm-hmm. And then after that, you have Red Bull, who are just going to high press and push up on the wings naturally without taking into account our weaknesses there. So the past 2 games haven't been good enough defensively.
The first 10 minutes with Seattle was holy cow. They got those 2 goals within the first 8 minutes. They were attacking, and they were a scary looking attack with Jordan Morris being on like a wing and then figuring it out with Ruidiaz and everything. And they looked dangerous. So you're right about Seattle being something to be worried about coming up. By the way, I just want to say before Jeffrey chimes in, toss us a like, toss a subscribe for more, hit that bell icon if you want to be aware of our live films, and we have more options to view us. We're now on Stitcher and we are on iTunes, so you just look for Spitting Fire YT. So we are available in other methods. If you can't catch us live on YouTube, download the podcast on another way. Toss us a rating on iTunes. It does help us apparently get an establishment, supposedly. I don't really know how it works. Anyway, Jeffrey, your comments. Toss us a like. Much appreciated.
So yeah, we've touched on the fullbacks, and I think especially CF97, the fan base, we're well aware of that issue. But also, Bastian Schweinsteiger, I felt like yesterday he barely touched the ball, and Dax would barely touch the ball. So not only are we looking at our fullbacks, but, I think that dynamic between Dax and Bastian Schweinsteiger is still an issue, and we saw that yesterday. And Georgie, without a doubt, was the best out of those 3. So hopefully Bastian and Dax can figure out those roles, as we've been saying this, 2 years in now. But of course, I think if those 2 can pick up their play together, and then, 2 of these fullbacks can pan out, we could, potentially go some places. But real quick, I want to read some stats. I have the LA game stats here. 17 shots for the Chicago Fire, 13 for LA. 57% possession, Chicago Fire, 43% possession, LA. And then yesterday's match, 7 shots Chicago Fire to 2 to Orlando. Wow, 2 shots on target for Orlando, and we lost. And then the possession rate was 59% in favor of the Chicago Fire to 41%.
Marty said it at the beginning, 2 winnable matches.
Yep. And if I could go back to Jeff's comment on Basti for this one, here's another fun stat for you. Almost 70% of his successful passes were made in his own half yesterday. A lot of those in his own final third. So I think he begs the question of what do we see Basti's role being going forward? Because he's looked a little bit slower than he has in years past. Obviously, he's getting older. It looks like he's being asked to play make from different positions. But there were also times where Johan Kappelhoff and Marcelo were both ahead of Schweinsteiger in build-up play. And so you're having his role become much different than it has been in years past. So that might explain some of the lack of cohesion in midfield as he's being asked to play further back to try and deal with some of this defensive covering. So I would say that, again, that's another indicator to me that a back 3 with Basti in the middle there and Johan and Marcelo playing wider might just be the way to go. They seem to be doing it anyway at times in the match. Why don't you just call it what it is and give him his defensive duties there and let Dax and Georgie run the midfield.
So you got to have the horses to be able to run that system, and you need to be highly athletic, and you definitely got to have those physical players to be able to run that system. That's why it took a little while for Klopp to install his system at Liverpool, for Pep to install his system in Man City. But and of course, these guys are getting high-level professionals to fill their wants and needs. And the Fire have to deal with certain other players and a coach that's trying to teach this. So,
but my question to Marty next year is, how does Gaitan, you want to switch to this 3 in the back?
Yeah.
If Gaitan comes in, how does that switch up the? Let me rephrase it. If Gaitan does come, whose playing time is he taking away?
I think Dax.
I don't think so. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of ifs here. We can talk about Gaitan now if you guys would like.
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, we'll see if he ends up coming in. But if he does, I don't see why you don't play a 3-5-2 and have him sit underneath two strikers, and whether you sit Dax or Georgie or I mean, it also depends on injuries, right? They're already starting to pick up knocks, so yeah.
And with the Gaetan situation, it's extended almost now 2 to 3 weeks. We were first hearing about it on February 28th. Some people were saying, "Oh, it's done." I saw Elliot Bambrow tweet out, "Oh, it's a done deal." But then we haven't really heard confirmation that it is. And then we have, some intermittent. It seems like it's still, basically happening. But still, 2 to 3 weeks is a long time to go from like, oh, he's signed, and then it still hasn't happened. Of course, they have to deal with MLS rules, but then you also wonder about other teams potentially getting involved.
Yeah. So, to my knowledge, right now the Gaetan situation is not resolved. He hasn't signed. It's not that they're waiting to announce or something like that. He hasn't signed. The issue right now is that Gaetan, I believe, has officially left the Chinese club he was playing for, DL Yifang, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Mm-hmm. So in order for them to become roster compliant with the 4 international rule that the Chinese league, he could no longer be on their roster. So I believe a buyout has happened, and he is now a free agent, if I'm understanding correctly. With that being the case, now you're in a position where he can sign wherever he wants. And
for more money.
And the Fire, unfortunately, because of MLS roster rules, are in a position where he's going to be a discretionary TAM player if he signs. Now, if he can get more than that 1.5 million or 1.49 million guaranteed elsewhere, then, now it's a question of where would he rather play. Does he want to experience MLS? Does he want to go back to Boca and play in a familiar environment, a place where he's loved, a place where he came up? Last I spoke to Chicago Fire staff, they were very hopeful that he will sign, but it was not a done deal. This was on Saturday. So
yeah, I was hearing similar and all that jazz. I'm going to read off some comments real quick from the Spitting Fire YT viewers. Merch Bobo and Merch Boo Boo and the Boo Boo merch. I don't know. From Slow Days, Dago is here. Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hi, Dago. Happy Sunday. Could be wrong, but I believe that CJ has more goals for us than Akam has for Philly in 2 seasons. And he was a third of the price. Ooh. Interesting to note. Marcelo, I got a comment about Marcelo, I lost it. Marcelo needs to be sharper passer. His passes will cost us points. For Marcelo's passing, he definitely, I've been seeing that's kind of seen throughout the year. Not crisp as a passer as I thought he would be. What do you think about that?
He had an 81% pass success according to Who Scored, it's better than Schweinsteiger.
Wow.
It's not.
So maybe it's the eye test.
Terrible. It's really
by my count, I mean he's averaged almost 80% pass completion, which is not bad for a center back.
Yeah,
so I don't understand that comment. But.
So maybe that's just the eye test. Rather than backing up the stats. Run at the wing should be the team's game plan against Chicago. Counterattack, push wide, cross early. Yeah, that's a game plan against a lot of good teams. But certainly against the Fire where you have weak outside backs. And in MLS where a lot of teams don't have the greatest outside backs. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I think the Fire are exceptionally bad on the outside back position.
Tornorio would agree. He said that both the outside backs for the Fire are USL level at best.
Well, and that brings us into Slow Days' next comment. Campos offers way more going forward, more physically going back. Hassler's only better with positioning defensively. Hassler's also much poorer as a passer and with the ball at his feet. Marty, I honestly disagree with you a little bit on the Campos argument. I think that I am pro Campos, and I think I might be optimistic. But
you're also biased. You're a converted winger yourself that went back to right back.
From my eyes, I mean, I really didn't see him. I didn't see any mental errors. I mean, his defense, was nothing special, but I mean, he did the job going forward. I mean, He was very dangerous with those early balls. I thought he got the job done, and he's got the job done in 2 matches. I think he is probably, as of now, our best fullback option. And I'm telling you, I think he might surprise some people. It's 2 matches, but we'll see. We'll see where he goes from here.
Yeah, so leave him on, and go to a back 3, and then put Frankowski on the other wing, and just call it what it is, that you're going to go all out attack and try and cover for some of those advancing wingers with an extra center back.
I like that.
Moving Botke back, or putting Lillard on there, or any of those. And I think we forgot to mention that we're going to have to see some experimentation come Saturday because of Corrales' red card. So
yes.
We'll see what they do.
Let's see. Some more. Tifo. The Tifo looked great. Absolutely. I was talking to Jiggly about that. He was talking bringing it in. It looked awesome. Attendance was not so great. That's certainly true. Kind of to be expected. Jeffrey and I talked about this real quick, and we also saw this. We saw blame being launched at certain parties. That's just like, how are they blamed for the Fire not being able to bring in fans is beyond me. We don't have to necessarily go into that. But what I'm saying here is the weather, it was a little negative, but honestly, there's been worse situations. That snow game from a few years back was awesome, and I thought was more well attended, and was more abysmal conditions than this. It's a number of factors here.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated situation. If you look at East Coast games in general for the last 2 weeks, they've been sparsely attended, period. MLS needs to do a better job with scheduling. I don't understand why we don't play away to Orlando yesterday. Why don't you just flip the home away, and they can come here, whenever that game is scheduled for later in the season. I don't know why East Coast teams can't play the first 4 or 5 games away against West Coast opposition.
Literally any time is better than in the Midwest or the Upper North than in March. I mean, like, April's better, May's better, October, all of that. But March is not good for the northern MLS teams.
And it makes for a more exciting latter half of the season when you're playing in-conference matches that matter in a more congested way. So that's one thing. The other thing is attendance has been bad for the last X amount of years because the product has been bad for the last X amount of years. And that's something that is going to take a lot of, rebuilding of good faith going forward. There are a lot of people that after the last boycott said, enough is enough. I'm not going to be treated this way anymore, and I'm not coming back until Nelson's gone. And you can't begrudge people that say that. And it's not an easy situation with an easy fix. This is a very long-winded kind of relationship with the Fire that fans have had for the last 10 years.
Yeah, and they're not alone. There's certainly other teams out there in the professional sporting world that have these similar relationships where it's almost, they're rough. They're rough. And then, we try to support these teams and they're like, hey, give us money and we'll make things happen. And then we're like, we haven't seen it. We're looking for it. We want to believe it. I got a whole bunch more comments, unless you guys have any more thoughts about that last one.
Yeah, I got something to say here real quick. Marty mentioned, how, not only Marty, but this whole preseason, every fan has been going back and forth, 4 in the back, 3 in the back, 4 in the back, 3 in the back. And it's mind-boggling that, we're 3-4 years into this tenure, and we're still talking system, we're still talking shape, and it just seems like they just bring in guys to bring them in. Like, does Pano not shoot Nelson in emails, like, of player types? Like, it's just like they just grab any player they can grab, and we need to win this year. We have to win this year for the fan base. People are leaving, and it's just each season is getting more and more dire.
I definitely want to get into Paunovic's tactics.
I just don't get the player type thing and this constant back and forth of formation. It just doesn't make sense.
I would echo those sentiments. I mean, you guys know how I feel about Pauno. You've asked me about that before, and I think in the first 2 games, I don't understand what he's doing with substitutions. I think he pulls off players in the LA game that can ultimately get draw or a win there in order to shore up defensively when he didn't have to. I guess you're kind of forced into certain changes with the Corrales red card last night, and that makes things a little bit different. But the tactics, I'm not a fan of. The substitutions, I'm not a fan of. Again, they're still trying to build chemistry and cohesion 2 games into the season, but there are teams in this league that show that they can hit the ground running. And that's certainly been missing. I didn't understand Pauno's extension. I'm very confident and really hope that they pull off 6 points in the next 2 home games. But it's also very realistic that they could get 1 or no points in the next 2 home games.
And then at what point are we looking at Pauno and saying this is the guy who's had 4 years to install a plan? And that's here's what I don't get. This is his 4th year. How are these guys going out there and still looking so clueless to execute this guy's plan? And how does this guy not have a set executed plan way to score, like a Bearhalter, like all these other these coaches that we'll talk about that have ways to score? There's like 16 ways to score in soccer, essentially. Blah blah blah. How does Pauno score? His best way is to kick it in from the wingbacks, and there's other ways and better ways to score. So I mean, I'm just at a loss for seeing this 4th year of the project of these players looking kind of clueless. And I know the quality of these players is there. The Katai, for Frankowski, Georgi Mihailovic, Nikola, all the quality is there in these players. They are amazing. They have such individual great quality. But I'm not seeing the coach getting the best out of them or making a cohesive tactical unit capable of being dangerous and scoring on a consistent basis. And after 4 years, how much more do we got to see?
Yeah. Right, that's exactly right. 60% possession almost yesterday, even going a man down and you produce only 3 shots on target. I think it says a lot with that front 6. And the quality is certainly there, but it seems like those players are just trying to make it happen on their own in whatever capacity they can when they're on the ball, without a set, approach. And so, I think you guys are spot on in that analysis.
Do you think if Pauno keeps struggling in the beginning of the year, or just the fire we keep dropping points, do you think he could be in the hot seat real quickly?
I mean, if you're in a situation where you only have 1 or 2 points from the first 4 games, he should be on the hot seat. But we've been shown in the past that Nelson has unwavering trust and support, and so I'm not sure. I don't quite understand that relationship, but it seems to be very strong. And I don't know. You would hope that a coach with 1 point from the first 4 matches in his 4th year is on the hot seat, but history has shown us otherwise.
And he has a 3-year extension already, so I mean the guy's potentially paid to be here for a while, and now they have to pay him to go away. Is going to be the rub of the rub there. Also, like you said, these questionable substitutes. If we could just talk about this real quick. I mean, we're not seeing ghosts. We're not seeing phantoms. We are seeing legitimate problems with this, and they've been there since the beginning. We've seen some things that have been fixed. I got to say, his press conferences and his press conference presence, manner, the way he's presenting his message to the media and everything, it's gone up. He's evolved and he's gotten better in those aspects. One thing that he's never gotten.
He's still a mess on the side.
He's a mess on the side. You had to see the 4th official go and contain him. But I mean, there are aspects. There's fans that like that fire, that passion. I do. But also, you want to see that fire and that passion properly focused. It can't just be a wayward blast of a flame. It's got to be like a flamethrower where it's focused and so it's effective and making offense happen, making goals happen, and not just being like, oh, I'm so upset that he didn't try hard enough in this 1 minute. And when he is trying hard enough in all these other minutes, I'm seeing players, I'm seeing Katai do things for the coach, and the coach, and all these other players do the things that the coach wants to do, but then there's just individual moments where maybe they make the mistake, and then Pano's exploding about it, which I understand that as a coach too. I mean, it's frustrating. You've been working on these things, and it's the small things that you have to get right, but this is what we've seen since the beginning, and we got to see some progression here on both sides, getting the best out of those players. And is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, no one will ever fault Pauno for his passion. I think it's there on display for everyone to see, and that's, a really important thing. But your other comments are also right.
Yeah, I mean, he wants to win 24/7, which is not a flaw, but the other aspects is, I don't know, sometimes you got to have some perspective, and he seems sometimes to be able to apply that. So hopefully we can see some improvement, but at the same time, we're seeing 4 years of we don't know what this guy's plan is. We don't know what the tactical agenda is here. We see the 4-2-3-1 constantly deployed, but the way that these strings are being pulled and the offense is happening, we're seeing Katai maybe drop too far back for the ball. And then when you see Man United and when you see these other teams, which are, of course, higher level professionalism, high level coaching, but you see the tactical things that they're doing and how they're making it work, it just looks so different. But then you could even point to other MLS teams that look better and that are improved. So, I mean, there are examples in our own league. I don't have to be looking at the premiership for these examples of cohesive tactics and plans that work. But we're not seeing that with the Fire now for the 4th year in a row.
But Marty, my question for you is, doesn't it seem like Pauno is just getting players that, like, I go back to the player type thing. Like Nelson, he's just bringing in, I don't know what he's looking for in players besides talent and maybe quality, but I just don't see the player type. Excuse me?
Soccer lifestyle, that's very important too.
Yeah, we know that.
Please let me know.
But it just seems like Nelson gives Pauno just talent or whatever you want to, and the player type aspect is completely lost. So you know what I'm trying to say?
I do, and I think that's part of the problem is the way that the Fire have been structured in recent years. Nelson has a lot on his plate. He's running the soccer side of things as well as the non-soccer, stuff. No matter what your thoughts or feelings about Nelson are, he's got a lot on his plate. And we've talked about scouting here on the podcast in the past. That's certainly not up to par in terms of having scouts, having video analysts, plural. Because Pauno isn't going to be bringing in guys to much success, and you saw it with people like Bava and Arshakian, and those are the types of signings that Pauno personally is vouching.
Yeah.
So I think I can't add much beyond what you've already said in the sense that it doesn't seem like they're very organized in how they're going to be attaining players.
Shoot them an email.
And then,
all my wingers, I want pacey wingers. I want guys with technical ability. It's like it's one email.
Right, but the thing is, we do like their attackers. We do like Katai. We do like Frankowski. But, I mean, you got to certainly have a team that's cohesively works together. I mean, the fact that you could have a coach, Caleb Porter, go down to Columbus, and basically just the team is really well crafted there that he could just kind of settle in and do what he wants to do and not have to worry about so many of the things that Pauno has to necessarily worry about. But that also gets into this next comment here about Enrod. Just look at the way he's been designing this roster from the beginning. It's like taking a shotgun blast and just like getting the lucky with a scattered shot approach and just getting lucky with these picks. Dax and Basti operating in the same space. Neither have looked great in the forward passes. This is a comment, by the way. Basti is way too casual on the ball lately. He is casual on the ball lately. His errors started the goal, and also Dax looks like he lost a step. So, and I found myself wondering if Dax might be benefiting or a team like Orlando, and who on Orlando would benefit us? Would João Moutinho, who doesn't even start for them yet, who was a left back option, but was the first overall draft pick, but hasn't panned out yet. Got traded from LA for El Munir, I believe. So there was a trade thought I had, but at the same time, I don't want to be giving away talent. Dax and Basti are fire passion leaders of this team. Without them, I really don't know if the Fire can go anywhere. So that's another thing. But you have two of the players that just essentially want to operate in the same spot, in the same area. But one thing I did see, I saw Basti trying to go forward a bit more and Dax hanging back as that anchor position. But even still, Basti has that tendency to drift back to try and collect the ball and make things happen. So these guys want to operate in the same space. This is the thing we've been saying for the last 2 years with these guys. And this is the roster redundancies that are inherently built in by Nelson Rodriguez's decisions that affect Paunovic's ability to field the correct formation and way that he wants to win. So you're right, Jeffrey. I mean, there's all these problems at the core of the issue. I'll get into some more comments here. I think Basti wanted to play defense is telling. He's definitely slowing down. But paying what we're paying him for a central defender is insane. Also, we had Stexel on the other day. He was saying for the production that we're getting out of Bastian Schweinsteiger, it's definitely probably not worth the price tag. But there's other intangibles that Bastian Schweinsteiger brings that you could say maybe justify that.
I don't say that this year.
You wouldn't say that this year?
I don't know what those intangibles would be this year.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I think a lot of the mystique has worn off in terms of coming out to see him.
Doesn't bring out the fans.
I would be curious to see what the DP deal is, because if it's anywhere close to $7 million again, that's a head scratcher given what we've seen already. I for one wouldn't be too surprised if this was Basti's last year.
Do you remember Kaká? He was always like a high played player that just, and a Cam at that to me just never really produced. And from Orlando, played in Orlando. So do you think there's any comparison there?
I think Kaká in that market is a little bit different than Basti in this one. Mm-hmm. They really sent out a signal of intent by signing Kaká when they did, given the Brazilian kind of roots of a lot of the diaspora community in Orlando. So it's a little bit different, but I again don't see many of those intangibles in this year for Basti. So yeah, and you guys have rightly pointed out the way in which that has affected them on the field as well this year. He looks slower off the pace. This has been a problem since he got here, but he looks out of shape for the first couple weeks of the season every time. It takes him a while to get match fit, and that could cost them this year as well. So, yeah.
There is a seventh spot. Sorry, Jeffrey.
That's to keep ragging on Basti. He's a legend and he's a great player. But Marty, are you seeing what I'm seeing when there's these little moments where just his body language just
body language is huge.
It's just on the field, his body language is off. And a player like him that's polarizing, that's got to do something to the players around him, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I would go as far as to say complacent, as some of the comments allude to, but there certainly isn't as much. It was hard for me to believe him in his video talking about wanting to win a trophy with the Fire, after believing it in the first press conference, mm-hmm. When he was revealed. So that change is definitely there, and you can't question his quality.
I almost blame the Fire, though, Marty. I blame the Fire for not capitalizing on Basti when he did arrive. Why wasn't there more done to capitalize on this? They brought him in and they just didn't do enough to capitalize on him. And I can't blame Basti for that, but I mean, but you're right, he's degrading. These are questions that need to be asked from a roster decision. Is this the right decision? And does he have another year? Where's the best position to play this player? To win?
I mean, if he doesn't have a DP tag this year, then the Gaitan deal is already done.
Oh wow! Well, think about that. That's preventing that, and now you have this big, giant, world-class soccer player that you have to fit into your team and win with, And you have all these other redundancies that kind of are, but are good players that also have to play. The Dax McCartys, for instance. I mean, these are the core problems that we were talking about earlier. I got a couple more comments here. Dago with even popular teams in Mexico struggle for attendance. Club America, for example, who is a monster in popularity, has been averaging barely 20,000 per game. I think sports across the board are struggling too with attendance, not just everywhere. Cruz Azul has about 1,500 fans in Azteca Stadium the other day for a league game in an 85,000 capacity stadium. That is huge. I think the scapegoats are for Gaetan are Dax or Katai, but Marty was just saying maybe a scapegoat is the Basti's contract. When the Fire win, they sell out the stadium. They put out a few wins together and people will come out. But here's the thing about winning and economics and putting out a team. This is actually in the economic literature. Winning has nothing to do with producing attendance and making profits and making money. It certainly helps. But you could look no further than the Cubs when they were the lovable losers and they were selling out all the time. You could look at FC Dallas, who's putting down perennial winners down in Dallas and just can't even outdraw the Fire. They're struggling with that. So, I mean, it just simply isn't true that you got to put a winner to sell out tickets. No, there's a lot more things that matter than just putting out a winner. Look at how the Cubs go about it. Look how the Blackhawks go about it. There's other things than just bringing home the cup. I don't know if you guys have any comments about that.
I'd like to just ask one really quick question for both of you while we're on the subject of speaking about Basti and his contribution this season.
Sure thing.
What did you guys make of Dax getting the armband yesterday?
Dax has been getting the armband all the entire all the time since Basti's been here. So that to me has been a curious oversight that we definitely don't talk about. It's definitely something that is not often discussed. That ever since Bastian Schweinsteiger has arrived, he's like, oh, it's Dax's team. And is that him wanting to support Dax and just being a professional bro, you know what I mean? Or is it an indication of his desire of level of responsibilities here? He knows what he wants to do. He's not the captain. He's certainly going to do what he can. He's the world class. He knows his spot. He knows he's called on to do these things, talk to some guys and try and raise up their game and give them some confidence. But also he doesn't want the true responsibilities of being a captain, and we haven't really talked about that. That is a definite thing there, Marty. Good question. I don't know how I feel about it. What about you, Jeff?
I also wonder if it's the aspect where Schweinsteiger doesn't need an armband and to be listened to and be considered a leader.
Oh.
But going back to what we talked about earlier with Schweinsteiger and just how he's kind of fallen off a little bit, I wonder if those same comments and remarks can be said for Dax McCarty. And again, these are two players that I love and I think very highly of, and I'm glad they're on the Fire. But it just kind of seems like both of them have lost a step a bit. But do you share my opinion on that Dax these last two matches? And again, it's small sample size this year. It's so early. Maybe it's unfair for us to be judging a little early, but even in the preseason, Dax looked a little rusty.
They're older players, though. Sometimes older players, like the pitcher from the Cubs, maybe they just take a month or two to get going. Like Marty was even saying about Basti. Basti starts slow, but there does have to be a point in time when you get going.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Dax has had an awful 2 games. His distribution rate, his passing rate has been, equally as high as it has been in the past. Maybe it's not as positive going forward as we've seen in years prior, but passing rate is still the same. His ability to have defensive interventions, I think he had, double-digit defensive interventions in both of the matches this season. So I don't know. Dax is getting older, and he's not going to be that box-to-box guy that he was back in the day for DC and New York necessarily anymore. His role is going to need to change, and you guys brought up the fact that he might be overlapping in what he's being asked to do in terms of roles with Basti. I don't know. Maybe it's telling that he's not moving the needle one way or the other at this point, and he's just kind of there.
We got some more comments here about Schweinsteiger and Dax. Basti wasn't playing and wanted to prove himself in 2017. Now he is frustrated with his team and wants to win, but doesn't play with that need to prove himself. Basti should have had the armband since day one. He's just a team player.
Yeah, that's a question that
I think him not taking the armband is the same thing. He doesn't buy 100% into this team. It's something fun for him to do and make money. The heart isn't fully there. Whoa.
Wow. Whoa.
So a lot to unpack there.
So the heart might not be in it, and that certainly might be true. This might be just a place where he can come raise his kids in a nice city like Chicago and not have the recognition that he would otherwise have in Manchester or Bayern or anywhere in Germany. That is, still he's going to get recognized here, but it's certainly just on such a lesser scale, and it is a nice place to raise your children. I'm sure he's talked to Arne Friedrich about that, But you're right. I mean, are we getting everything we can out of Bastian Schweinsteiger right now for this $7 million that we're paying? He's not being captain. He's not doing that. I don't know. What do you think about that, Marty? I never really thought about it, but it's like I thought about it but didn't think about it because it didn't want to think about it. Didn't want to think about the implications.
Yeah, I think you're in a position where if Bastian is healthy, he's going to be in the starting 11 no matter what. And is that a good thing for the team if he's going to continue to have performances like the last two matches? There's a lot to unpack there. We're just going to have to see how the team deals with that going forward. And, if they sign Gaetan, are you now in a position where you're going to try and put your best players out on the field just because, or your biggest named or your biggest paid players on the field just because, or are you going to try and put a winning team out there? And that'll be another question for Pauno and Nelson going forward. Are they going to take an approach like, New York has in the past, or, teams like even Orlando this year and what O'Connor did with Dwyer in the first two games, where if the mentality isn't right, then they don't play.
That's a good question.
I understand Dwyer was injured or coming back from an injury, but you also have his preseason rant about, not wanting to answer those questions about being in a difficult situation and questions about Dwyer's leadership, and then he's in a position where he's benched. Are Pauno and Nelson willing to do something like that this season? I would say I don't think either one of them will.
I don't think either of one of them has the ability or confidence to sit Basti, even for one game.
Marty, do you see a scenario where Dax McCarty gets traded?
I know that Dax has asked for a trade in the past, and that there was a potential for a move in that respect. It might seem natural for him to want to go finish his career in Orlando, where he's from. I think that if anybody's going to get moved to try and shake up the roster, he would be a natural pick. But
I think that's unfortunate because he seems to be the bigger leader than Basti. I mean, he's the one who's willing to take on the armband, who wants to take on the armband.
I really like seeing Dax here in Chicago, and he always offers you that fight and that 100% no matter what. So I would hate to see him go, personally.
And he's very transparent in his post-match interviews. I agree. It would goes back to what James says. It kind of stinks because these players do have quality, and it kind of seems like it's just Nelson not putting the right pieces around him and around these two guys, and then it's Pauno not getting the best out of these guys. So it's a little bit of everything there.
Leaders perform, not just yell. Comment from Chad. But that's true, and I see a lot more yelling from Basti than performing. That's a problem. And the other players who are there see that. So that's also a problem. And the other question is, there are teams in MLS where Basti maybe doesn't start because there's just better quality in front of him on those certain teams.
Yeah, those wouldn't be paying him $7 million a year either, though. So,
yeah. So that's issue. We haven't really gotten to the stats of the game here, Jeffrey. Let's get into the game here a little bit more, a little game discussion if we can. But I don't know if you have the stats up there. We talked about the shots. I don't know how crosses were. 13 crosses for the Fire, 11 crosses for the for Orlando. I don't know. That seems fine and decent. But the question is, you want CJ Sapong in there getting those crosses, and we've talked about it. This offense, when they set it up with CJ Sapong on that right wing and with Nikolic on that right forward, what are they playing? It's such a weird offensive system.
I don't know. I think we've been a little bit on a negative spin for the last couple minutes.
Yeah.
So maybe add some positivity. I thought they looked fantastic going forward again yesterday.
Yeah, let's spin it.
There were a couple of uncharacteristic Nico misses from being 2 or 3 up, and that's why yesterday's result was so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they got a draw at home against Orlando, but that they played well for a second consecutive game for spells of the match. I think if you get more consistent going forward, then results will come. But you had, 2 uncharacteristic misses from Nico, one where he was about an inch from a tap-in and could have put it away, and then another where he blasted it over the bar instead of, maybe trying to control it. But again, his form will return. Strikers go through periods like that. And there is a lot of positivity going forward. If they can find that final touch, if they can get Frankowski back on the pitch for 90 minutes on Saturday,
mm-hmm.
there is a lot to be proud of with this team, and there is a lot to praise. So I don't want to try and be overly negative with how we're framing these first 2 games.
Great point. Great point, Marty. Flip the script, because we are concentrating on the negatives. I mean, that's what we're here. We're here to talk about criticisms, and it's a lot easier to talk about the criticisms. But there is a lot of positives. There is a lot of talent on that field. There's some excitement to watch, and they're starting to piece things together. But the questions still remain: are they going to piece these things together? Are they going to have a consistent way to score? Is Pano going to be able to get these connects pieces to connect and stay connected and keep working? Jeffrey?
No. I agree with Marty saying, I told you this, James, that there's moments of football that already looks better than anything we saw of last year, like those first 20, 25 minutes. So there is definitely things to be, happy about and positive, and you got to figure that they will continue to build and improve on. And maybe it's just, we're just a jaded fan base, and just like when the Cubs were in that World Series run, you always thought something wrong was going to happen. And that kind of feels like being a Fire fan right now too. So, but Marty's right. I mean, there's a lot of positive stuff going forward. Marcelo looks like he could play. Frankowski looks like he could play. We got CJ Sapong, maybe Gatan's coming in. And who knows what else might be in. So he's right. There's definitely a lot of positives that we should be focusing on more.
Who starts the next match, Marty? Sapong or Nikolic?
I would, again, if I'm in charge, they both start and you roll out a 3-5-2 with 2 strikers.
I like that. Let's see. So it sounds like we're all kind of encouraged through 2 matches. Do you guys kind of agree? I'm certainly encouraged. There's worrying signs, but 0-1-1. If they pull off a win here and end up 1-1-1, there's a lot of signs here. But if they ended up 0-2-2 walking out of these next couple games, I mean, and you're all of a sudden really behind the 8 ball. I mean, that's when these causes for questions are going to certainly arrive. But they have high-level opponents coming up.
Yeah, I think this is the earliest we've seen a must-win game in a long time. They need 3 points against Seattle on Saturday, because then, like you said, you're 1-1-1, and you can make the argument that you're still moving in a positive direction. If you go from losing to drawing to winning, you're on an upward trajectory. If you let Seattle come in here and you lose at home before having to play against Red Bull, who might already be out of CONCACAF Champions League and looking to focus and just really run at the league again, before having to go to play Toronto away, I think Saturday's a massive game already. And the positives are there. I mean, we haven't talked about Katai much in this podcast, but he showed once again this weekend that he can create a goal-scoring opportunity out of virtually nothing, pulling passes out of thin air. And if he hits his stride again, I know he was dealing with a little bit of a knock as well. He left practice early a couple times this week.
Oh, wow.
But if he hits his stride, Georgie, I'll sing his praises once again. Yeah, they win on Saturday. They're back on track.
And they need to. It's definitely, you need to get those points, and that's why it's so darn unlucky to not get as many points as we can out of these first two games. I don't know if Jeffrey is back. Jeffrey?
Yeah, I'm here.
So Marty, Jeffrey, best player through the first two games.
Yeah, you go first, Marty.
CJ Sapong.
Ooh, I like it. You want to toss any analysis in there about why? I thought he was definitely jumping high and winning, and his last 90, he goes full 90.
Yeah, 2 goals in 2 games. You can't argue with that. I think that there were moments where he was absent against LA, but other moments where he showed that he only needs one chance to give your team a shot at some points. I think yesterday he had a phenomenal match, running down that left wing, constantly linking up with Georgie and Katai. Sapong was the go-to outlet. Even if you look at the passing stats for Corrales, who had an okay game in terms of distribution, most of his passes were going down that wing for Sapong. And they have quality in the middle, but I think there's a reason why they were utilizing him as an outlet continuously in that match. So not only did he get the goal, but he was able to muster a couple shots that were technically off target or blocked, but he looks good. He looks hungry. Definitely my man of the match for not only yesterday, but probably the LA game as well.
I'm going to go with Frankowski, even though he didn't play much last game. When we saw the starting 11, and I was so bummed that he wasn't starting. I was probably looking forward to watching him the most, and then we only got to see, 30 minutes of him after a red card. So, and even when he came in, he was still really, really, dynamic. So I'm going to say Frankowski, just really, really fun player to watch. And if he started, and think about that first 15, 20, 25 minutes where we were just all over Orlando, you never know. You never know what that first 20 would have looked like if he was out there. Maybe he would have banged one in or created one himself. So I'm also excited for Sapong, but I'm also excited for Frankowski.
Yeah, Frankowski couldn't go the whole 90 yesterday, so that's why you didn't see him start. I'd like to point out that, Frankowski played half a season before going into winter camp with Jagiellonia. It's not like they just give you a break to do nothing. He was in training with Jagiellonia and then flew here and, was doing 2-a-days because the Fire were in their preseason. So he's got half a season in his legs already with going into preseason here. Picked up a knock this week. So, give him time. They're going to need to manage his minutes, but I'm very excited. I had a chance to speak to Frankowski for almost an hour last week, just to help get him settled in to Chicago. He hadn't been able to speak to too many people. His English isn't really there yet. So,
Yakdam Shemek.
Yeah. He was happy to have a compatriot to talk to, and I was just really blown away with his maturity for his age. He said that he'd been looking to get out of Ekstraklasa and Jagiellonia for a while now, and that they never thought that the bids coming in were of a high enough valuation. He felt a little bit stagnated in Poland and really wanted to push his ceiling and see what he could do. So he is very much hungry as well. And
what is his ceiling, Marty? What's your guess?
I think he's got a super high ceiling. I think he really wants to solidify a spot in the Polish national team. I think he's got 4 caps, one of which is a start. He's shown that he's pacey, good on the ball. So he wants to. He said it when he first arrived that MLS is a league that has typically in Europe been seen as a place to go to retire. And he said, I want to help change that mentality. I want to come here and show people that it can boost your career and lead to more opportunities than some of the European leagues can.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to have him here. He's very humble, very hardworking. He'll definitely have a breakout season.
In a way, it's a bigger window than some of these European leagues. I mean, now, admittedly, the European leagues, the top teams get to play in Champions League or Europa League, so that's certainly very prestigious. But the shop window of MLS has certainly grown and expanded in its viewing capabilities, and people are starting to take notice. Teams are starting to take notice with the Almirones and the Acostas and the Lucia Acostas and all that stuff. So it certainly is true, and that's awesome. My player for the first two games, because I think you guys both had great shouts, but I'm going to go one different here. Usted. World of difference we're seeing out of Usted and the confidence that he provides that back line. Kaplov playing in that left center back role was a little surprising. I mean, we saw that all through preseason, but he's certainly, starting to settle into it. And as most of the time he was a right center back, but certainly Usted has to be helping. And having that quality backstop back there is showing, and it looks huge.
Yep, it's good to have a functioning goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
he would functioning goalkeeper.
It brings me to my next comment. The Fire went and did something crazy. They signed a under 14 player, a goalkeeper.
Yes.
Gabriel
right?
Gabriel Slonina.
Yep.
He's 6'4" and is a 14-year-old who plays for the Chicago Fire Youth Academy, and the Fire signed it. I don't know if this potentially affects Damian Loss signing with the Fire, or if he's going to be going over to Europe and just not signing with the Fire at all. Or maybe if this is an indication of Nelson learning from the Gutman and Loss situations, where maybe he should have signed those guys earlier to be able to parlay their value essentially and help them get onto Europe and use Fire as that stepping stone club instead of not getting any reimbursement or essentially any financial value for that. Any thoughts there?
You want to take this one, Jeff?
Ha! Jeffrey.
Hold on, can you guys hear me? I'm having some issues here. Hold on. No, Marty, you take this one. I'm sorry.
So.
All right. Yeah. So I think it's important to reward your academy kids for doing well. I know Nelson hasn't had a good track record of believing in domestic homegrown players in terms of trying to get them integrated. There's talk of him reaching out to MLS to see if they could liquidate the academy in general. After he was told no, I think that he's got to salvage, or save face at some point. And so you have Reynolds being brought in. Now you have this signing of Swanina.
Swanina.
I don't know how it interacts with the Damian Las situation. I think Las has a very high ceiling. I haven't seen Swanina play ever, but Las's goal has always been Europe. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he ends up. This kid that's already been getting U.S. men's national team youth call-ups in a position at goalkeeper that the U.S. has produced traditionally strong talent in. So him cementing that youth spot reiterates his high ceiling.
Marty, I want to ask you about the new section that was opened. I believe it's section 137, correct?
Yeah, section 137.
What have you heard about that? How was that experience?
I went and spent some time with them, and it was wonderful. It feels very, very good to have the rest of our Fire family back in the stadium after an unnecessary and lengthy absence. It was great to see the joy on the faces of Sector Latino and the Banter Buddies being back where they belong. They brought a lot of noise. They brought a lot of energy. That end is built as a sounds, a sound stage for when they do concerts. So the reverb and all of that just makes it intimidating. I actually spent a little bit of time in the club as well, and it was very nice to hear noise coming from both sides of the section, and it's going to only keep growing from here. So it was great to have them.
I'm curious how the logistics was. So Section 8 was still in that Harlem end, and so you're saying that was like a quasi-sector Latino group that was on that section, correct?
In 137?
In 137?
Yes. Correct. So,
yes, got you.
So 137 was the product of a long series of back and forth dialogue between supporters and the front office staff, which ultimately the ISA, the Independent Supporters Association, went into kind of a final discussion with members of the Chicago Fire staff to reach a resolution on 101, and 101 was given the option to return back. We talked about this a little bit on the last podcast. They could come back to the stadium either in 101 or choose a different section, and 101 leadership decided that 137 is where they wanted to be, and the ISA supported them in that decision, and we're very happy to have them back.
It's definitely got to be intimidating for that whoever the away goalkeeper is, and just to have those behind there too, making that noise. What was it before? It was just a regular fan section?
I think it was called the Miller Party Deck or something like that, where you would just be able to kind of roam around there and play bags and drink. I don't know. So it's much better utilized this way.
I want to have some a little season ticket holder discussion. I mean, just like a small one, just because I want to talk about the experience. There's been a recent move to go to all digital tickets. I mean, we had the digital tickets all last year, but digital parking passes, even the benefits card is digital. And so I don't know. I've kind of found that's a little problematic. And I feel like, even the people who are maybe the fire employees aren't so pleased about having to work with that technology too. And it doesn't seem like the rollout has gone so smoothly. I mean, it works. It gets the job done. But I just got to say, I don't know. I feel like so dependent upon, like, now I got to make sure my phone's charged. And if my phone dies at the game, am I in trouble? Or if it dies before I get to the game, I'm in trouble. So I don't know if you had any thoughts about that, but that's kind of Jeffrey and mine experience the other day when we were going to the home game. We were just like, I'm not so fond of these digital movements. And I know the Bears are actually moving towards that too. A lot of other sports professionals franchises.
Yeah, I really don't like going to digital only. Mm-hmm. Some of my favorite moments in the past were receiving my season ticket package and opening it up and seeing the really wonderful artwork that the Fire were able to incorporate in those tickets, whether it was, fan posters or pictures of fans or pictures of the players. I really always looked forward to that. And now, to be honest, I didn't even download the SeatGeek app. I went and picked up my tickets at will call. So, yep.
I miss holding the physical tickets too. I mean, there was something so awesome about having a Cubs ticket or a White Sox ticket or a Bulls ticket or a Bears ticket, the physical ticket, and then after the game, you could kind of just like put it in your little, put it in a place where you could kind of keep it, and it becomes a memory. And it's so harder to keep these digital memories from these digital tickets. It's just not something you're going to be like going back to look at. But for some reason, that culture existed with physical tickets, and that culture is going away, and I'm definitely not a fan of it.
Absolutely. I know people that collect stacks and stacks of every game they've been to, and they can no longer do that. So,
what's the difference between your phone dying or losing your pass? Oh, you can charge your phone and get access back. So that is, there is some truth there, but I'm not losing my ticket, but now I'm dependent upon me going to find a charge station, and then sitting there and taking the time to let it charge. to get my phone access. These are problems. And I'd rather be watching the game than sitting there having to watch my phone charge. So since I didn't have a smartphone, I am no longer a welcome customer. One of our Margaret was saying, I do think that you can call the club and ask for physical tickets and explain, I don't have a smartphone, I got a flip phone or something like that. But still, I don't know. Don't be a hoarder. That's one comment. If your ticket was lost, you wouldn't get in at all. That's a comment. That's true. So I don't know. It presents all its own problems, but this is.
It might be a good time to start wrapping it up here. I got one more question for Marty here, and it's just a basic, general one. If Gaetan does come through, do you see this team as a playoff team? Do you see them sneaking into that 7th spot, that 6th spot? Where do you see the Fire finishing up? And again, it's too early, but again, what is your gut telling you?
I think this team finishes in the 7th playoff spot, whether they sign Gaetan or not. Going forward isn't a problem that they have. I think Gaetan is a really nice luxury that gives you credibility with a certain demographic in the stadium, and it adds an exciting piece, and it adds depth that they don't really have. But it doesn't fix your wingback issues, and it doesn't fix the fact that the Fire are one center back injury away from, having a sophomore year Grant Lillard attempt to be a starter.
Yeah.
So I think that they have more important targets that they should be focusing on right now. So that's what I'll say about Gaetan. I think he's a wonderful player, great addition. If they can get it done, it doesn't fix their holes.
One of the comments, the Fire do need a Motorola phone charge station, or at least Motorola should look into that. So an idea for the Fire marketing people. But yeah, and who does another question from Chad, I think we already talked about it. Who does Gaetan replace as a starter if we get him? And we've kind of talked about this. It's like you got to move to that 3 in the back. You move Basti back, move Georgie back, and you let Gaetan take one of those spots up there. But then you also got to find a spot for Sapong somehow.
Yeah, I mean, headaches going with selection going forward is not a bad thing to have. So,
but again, you would like to see some more resources going to that back line, like you said, Marty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know they've got 1 or 2 targets that they're still attempting to bring in to shore up the back line.
In league, in MLS, or out of league?
Out of league for both of them.
Nielsen is one of those guys. It sounds like. I don't know if there's still interest there.
Nielsen is one of those guys. I don't know if that ship has sailed or not. And that Jonathan Bornstein is the other guy.
Oh, Borno.
Yep, he is currently under contract. I believe he's in the last couple months of his contract with Maccabi Netanya, which is in the Israeli league, and he's trying to see if he can get out of that contract. And then the Fire would pick him up. He's
34 years old. His salary is looking pretty cheap. But yeah, that wouldn't be a bad, just like a depth player, not necessarily a starter, right?
No, it gives you backline depth, but he also can play in either wingback role and a back 4.
But you think he'd start over Corrales, right?
With his pedigree, you would have to assume so.
Yeah.
I think that from what I've researched, when he started for Maccabi, he has played left back predominantly this year. So if they can get that done, you've got, a good thing going.
Maybe you could trade for Marcus.
Brandon Vincent. Imagine if they had Brandon Vincent still.
They don't. So.
What about a trade for Marcus Beasley? Bring him home.
Oh, I would give anybody on this team for Beasley to be back here, but yeah.
I would like that shout too. We were getting into, and you kind of said it, your prediction. Let's kind of have like our now we're 2 games in, perfect sample size to make our predictions for the entire season, right? So 7th spot, I'm thinking for the Fire. I wouldn't be surprised if they could make that 7th spot, like what you're saying there, Marty. But past them making that 7th spot, I don't see them making any noise. I see them losing the first round of the playoffs and just going back to settling up for next year. Bastian Schweinsteiger retires. Dax McCarty leaves the team. Katai stays. Nikolic is probably gone. This is just my speculation. Everybody else could launch their own. Frankowski, hopefully here. Georgie may be looking at Europe already at that point. Maybe Frankowski's already parlayed. I don't think so. That might be a little too soon. But and then you still have, what's going on with the back line? Is Marcelo and Kabelhoff the answer going forward? Probably. But then you still have to answer all those outside backs. We're going to go a whole season without answering this outside backs question. So, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts for the season. We make the 7th spot. We flame out real quick. U.S. Open Cup, we make this, we make a little bit of a run, but ultimately also will flame out and not win. And there's going to be no trophies on the table this year, even though they were promised by Bastian Schweinsteiger. That's kind of my thoughts for the season. Where are you guys at?
Yeah, I think Marty said 7th, and I agree with you as well. I think 7 is around where they will be, maybe a little bit better, and maybe they miss out on the playoffs. And again, it's two matches in, so
huge sample size.
It's hard to sell because who knows? Maybe they do catch form and they do turn it on, and because the middle table in the MLS really it's nothing special. So you never know. You never know what they could do if they find form. But again, it's ifs. It's only ifs.
I think it's a comment here. I think it's too early to tell. I don't want to be overly negative. Marty was saying that too. He was helping us flip the script. I do see the improvement, but not enough. I think we come close, but just short of the playoffs. Missed the spot by a few points. 7, yeah, but need to stay healthy though. So, any other prognostications there, Marty, for the season's future at the what we could expect for next year? About you said Basti potentially retiring. Any thoughts about Nikolic, Katai? Frankowski, any just quick thoughts? You were totally speculating here. We understand this is like 8 months, 9 months away, but I don't know. Any thoughts here? Kind of fun?
Yeah, so if Basti retires, that opens up a DP slot. If Nico comes back, he'll come back as a TAM player, and that opens up a second DP spot. He's only a couple $100,000 above TAM range right now. I think he and his family like Chicago enough for him to fall under a TAM contract. So that opens up 2 DP spots. I don't know how they're going to structure Katai's contract and how many seasons they're spreading that transfer fee across, but there is potential that he could be a TAM player next year if they have it available. So you're looking at the possibility of all 3 DP spots being open, and then we're in for another new project. So yay!
another couple
More
years of the project.
Exactly what we need. Oh no! And who knows if Pauno and Nelson are sticking around still? So goodness me.
And if Pauno struggles enough, yeah.
One more question actually before we shut it down. Marty, have you seen any more Mansueto fingerprints on this team in the last 2-3 weeks since we last talked to you? Any signs of Mansueto?
I saw him yesterday.
Hey, we'll take that.
Yeah. Both owners were in attendance yesterday.
Wow.
Oh, Hoffman. Okay.
So hopefully they both saw an unacceptable result as well. Basti as coach in the future. Any chance he sticks around?
To coach Chicago?
Yeah.
I hope not.
He's going to go coach at Bayern or something.
I think he would go join the front office of Bayern.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Philip Lahm blah, 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 blah. All right, so Marty, let's kind of wrap it up here, boys and girls. Everybody can launch your final thoughts in the comments, but Marty, final thoughts. Any other comments, things you want to add, initiatives you want to talk about?
Not really. Come out to the games, enjoy yourself. There's something for everybody at SeatGeek Stadium. Complain less, have more fun. Support the Fire for Food drive.
Heck yeah, check out this Fire for Food drive. Last comment, absolutely. Check out the Fire for Food drive. We have the links in our description. It's been really helpful. Everybody's been donating and helpful, and the numbers have been just shooting up. It's been incredible support. Marty was speaking about it earlier, and thank you everybody for taking the time to hang out with us today. Thank you, Marty, for taking the time to talk with us about the Fire and to dig into the game. Jeffrey, thanks for taking the time too, for being on the other end there and being my little partner in crime. Let's see. Thank you everybody for watching. Toss us a like and subscribe. Make sure to hit that bell icon. Appreciate if you guys take the time to give us a like. It just helps us, let us know that our work is being appreciated and gives us, just lets us keep going. Essentially, a little kudos there. But thank you, Marty, once again. Good. If you're always looking out for previews for the matches, be sure to take a look for Marty and for Fire Confidential and for Guillermo. Marty's usually doing previews for the matches. He did one for the last matches, and it's always good just to get, kind of get an idea of what you're heading into. You can get a good idea of what the coach is going to be planning on. This O'Connor guy, what we saw last time, and what to expect from Nani and all that. What did you guys think of Nani?
I don't think he really did much.
I think he needs to adjust, but his track record has not been good.
It's going the wrong way.
Wrong way. His career trajectory is going the wrong way. Being allowed to leave on a free from your last two major clubs is not something to be proud of.
It made me wonder if they're going to be in the running to try and bring in Anderson from Manchester United as well.
Oh, I would love that.
Right? I think he's like playing in Saudi Arabia or somewhere in the Middle East or in Turkey or something like that for on some second or third tier team. I'm like, holy cow, Anderson. This guy was like a FIFA 05 gem, but that just never developed.
I just want to say, Marty, thanks for coming on. And definitely next home game before a round, we'll walk over to the Section 8 tailgate and say hello.
Everybody, be sure to stop by the Section 8 tailgate. Be sure to check out the and try and donate if you can. $5 here goes a long way for the donations for the Food for Fire. I think it was like $5 is like, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 weeks of food that we were providing a child or a person in need in Chicago in our own community, and that just do your good deed for the year if you haven't yet, and just a little Spitting Fire YT challenge from all of us to all of you guys to do your good deed for the year if you can, and we'll appreciate it, and certainly somebody else will greatly appreciate it. So that's kind of our last thoughts here. Fire 1-1. They in a game that they should have won, but also was incredible that they tied up. It was great for them to come back down one and down a man, thanks to Corrales' red card, to get back in it. So that was certainly impressive. They showed resiliency there. There's a lot of promising things going forward for the Fire to look positive to look forward to. Thanks for taking the time, guys. Toss a like. We'll see you guys next time on Spitting Fire YT. Take a look for us on other places, Stitcher, iTunes, all that jazz, whatnot. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. Thanks for the shout-outs. See you guys next time.
See you guys next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye, footballer.